Similar to Plato's belief in the reality of things based on his concept of forms, Aristotle also envisions the world by giving high importance to substances. The union of matter and form represents things that exist in actuality outside the realm of substance. According to Aristotle, objects in the sublunar world, the world below the moon, can be separated from qualities like heat, cold, and others. These separated entities correspond to forms. The effort to reach the essence of things leads us to their true nature. This allows us to think of form as the answer to the question why. Aristotle's explanations of matter and form should be considered alongside his answers to the question, what is being? In Plato's system, form held a primary position. Aristotle, however, introduced the concept of matter into the discussion by adding continuity and change to this understanding. Aristotle envisioned matter as something that cannot possess qualities in itself and cannot be categorized, but we can apply categories to it. By matter, I mean that which in itself is not a particular thing, nor a quantity, nor any other of the categories that define being. For there is something that underlies all these, something which is different from each of the categories, inasmuch as it exists. All the others are said of being, but being is not said of them, while this is said to be matter. According to Aristotle, matter is what remains when the essence of a thing is abstracted. Matter becomes actualized and gains meaning when it unites with form. Matter by itself does not mean privation. It is defined as not existing in a particular way. In this case, privation can only be what is not present in itself. Aristotle's concept of matter should be understood as something close to substance. However, we do not consider privation as a substance. Matter, in a state where it cannot be actualized, meaning it does not take form, is unknowable in an epistemological sense. Matter, in itself, is unknowable. Matter is either something that can be perceived by the senses or by the mind. Bronze, wood, or anything that moves is sensible matter. Although not in terms of being sensed, the objects of mathematics are also intelligible matter. When Aristotle considers things that are agreed upon as existing, he begins his discussions by referring to those that possess matter. There is no doubt that sensible beings have matter. Being carries both matter and form. Here, matter is not actual but potential. In the final stage of being, we see the union of matter and form. Such beings are particular beings subject to generation and corruption. In this context, the relationship between substance and matter plays a crucial role in understanding the matter-form relationship. Aristotle ultimately believes that substance is only the form of a thing, the subject of a definition by genus or species, and that the nuances that distinguish particulars from one another are not a matter for philosophy. Here, substance primarily means that upon which something is predicated, but which is not itself predicated upon anything else. While matter can be the bearer of a thing, form can only be the thing that is born. Therefore, the existence of forms belonging to particular things is definite and independent. The fundamental difference between matter and form is that matter is potential, while form is actual. On the meaning of form, Aristotle, using the distinction between accidental and essential being, suggests that in the absence of a form, the substratum can be grasped. It is not what a statue is. When one thing is predicated of another, it is not a this. For example, a white man is not a this. As Aristotle states, a this in being is not determined simply by adding an accidental state, such as colour. Since whiteness does not carry a formal quality for a human, the expression white man cannot determine matter. The search for what makes a thing what it is represents a critical stage in understanding form. The relationship between matter and form can thus be determined. Thus, in a certain way, it turns out that health comes from health, a house from a house, and that which has matter from that which is independent of matter. For the arts of medicine and architecture are the forms of health and the house. A house should not be thought of merely as a roof and four walls. It is the arrangement of these for the purpose of providing shelter for humans and their possessions against various elements such as weather conditions. Aristotle's doctrine of substance is an indication of his commitment to teleology. To define a thing, one must know its essence, which is equivalent to knowing why it exists. In this sense, there is a parallel between matter and form. For Aristotle, the separation of form and matter is a mental construct. It's not a reflection of a separation that exists in nature. But this does not mean that form or essence is a logical abstraction that does not exist in nature itself. Aristotle, when defining, mentions the situation of those who take into account composition, mixture, and some other things. When he says that a house is made of its raw materials, he is referring to a house in its potential state, for it is still only matter. On the other hand, some point to reality by saying that it is a container that holds objects and bodies, while others combine the two and speak of the being that emerges from them. The difference here arises with form and actuality, while those who consider only the raw materials of the house are closer to matter. When Aristotle examines the nature of windlessness, he states that wind is a widespread stillness in the air. In this case, matter is air, and stillness is actuality. For example, in the calmness of the sea is matter, and calmness is the actual form. When Aristotle expresses his views on nature, the subject of physics, he emphasizes that form, eidos, is also a kind of nature. This is directly related to the concept of potentiality and actuality that we mentioned earlier. Nature is the form of objects that possess the principle of motion, and this can only be understood through concepts. Matter, on the other hand, is not nature, but is related to nature. Similarly, since what is natural is that towards which something that is coming into being develops, and not that from which it develops, form is also a kind of nature. According to Aristotle, the physicist's task is to study both matter and form.